こんにちは、ハリケーンフットボールです。今回の教材は、リーズユナイテッドの田中碧に関する動画です。リーズユナイテッドは、この冬の移籍市場で、すでに補強や放出に動いていますが、その動きの中で、田中碧の序列にも影響が大きそうな動きもあります。その中で、リーズファンにとっても、田中碧の売却について話すファンが増えているように感じますが、おなじみのワンリーズのコーナーも、シュミットの獲得により、田中碧が売却される可能性がかなり高くなったと見ているようです。実際にどのように話しているのかチェックしてみましょ
う。Now, the big issue, I think, when it comes to this, and when we're looking at Romano, Schmidt coming in, and I think we're all pretty obvious, I feel this is quite obvious now. I think this is Tanaka pretty much gone. If they're bringing in an 8 or a 10, and we're thinking about PSR, because we've got to look at this, guys. You've got to look at William Gnonto, Pascal Struijk, and Al Tanaka, right? They're your three when it comes to real profit, okay? How they'll be able to spend probably about 10 plus million, because there'll be bonuses in his contract on someone like Schmidt. We mentioned this morning about amortization. If you don't understand amortization, go check the video out from this morning. And yesterday as well, but primarily this morning when we're talking about JSL and a £40 million figure, Leeds can make that work, and it's called amortization. It's spread across the contract length. If you want to know the specifics about that, watch the video from earlier on where we go into a little bit more specificity around the Norwegian striker. So Leeds obviously are inquiring about a 9. We know that with JSL. The 10 is out of the blue. I didn't expect that, especially with a creator like Buonanotte been in there. You kind of think about Brendan Aronson. If Leeds were to go to a 4-2-3-1, where would he fit? Or a 4-3-3, where would he fit? I still thought Dom looked really isolated yesterday. And it's strange because I kind of want us to still go with 2 up top in Mecha and Dom. I wonder, once again, like we were talking about with Facundo Buonanotte, does this mean Leeds United are going to fall into a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 and we're going to move back to the style of which Daniel Farke effectively wants to play, which is being possession-laden, dominant at home, probably reasonably dominant away, but have the players to facilitate that. He's not got the players to facilitate it right now. You bring the players in to facilitate a possession-heavy style. Does Daniel Farke then just move away from having like Mecha and DCL up top? I think this season, with 4 or 5 months to go, that is the best way Leeds stay in this division. It's about going with a 3-5-2, really utilising 2 strikers up top, not having Okafor 2 spread and Gnonto 2 spread away from the main man and making him isolated, which I think we saw at times yesterday and we've seen at times in the last 2 or 3 weeks, but actually having Mecha up there with him. Little and large, a facilitator, and then a head point as a 2 up top. So that's kind of what I want, but you do wonder, there's a lot of things to talk about here and what this means, but this surely means, as well as Leeds bringing in Facundo Buonanotte, Leeds maybe changing style a little bit. Surely when you're looking at PSR headroom and wriggle room, which will become a focal point of conversation very soon for Leeds United. We've seen it with Forest, we've seen it with Villa, we've seen it with multiple clubs who've gone up, but they've had to sell. Leeds, probably for the next year's accounting books, will be looking at, it's got to be Tanaka, especially with the buy-in of what, 4 or 5 million quid or whatever it was. If you're going to get like a Brighton coming in for 25 million quid. So that's kind of where I'm at, guys. Let's get some of your comments in the section below anyway. Let's go. Let's see what you're saying. Tony says 3-4-2-1 possibly. Yeah, potentially, mate. Kirsch says maybe an opportunity came up that was too good for us to turn down. Maybe Peru or Gnonto could be going. I don't know, mate. I'd be really, really shocked if this didn't mean Tanaka was not on his way this window. I don't think that'll happen. Although, if clubs will be very well aware of someone like Romano Schmidt coming into Leeds, and they'll be thinking, well, where does this put Al Tanaka in the pecking order? Clubs will be aware of that. They're not stupid. We're talking about Premier League run clubs here and European run clubs who have scouts everywhere, the analysts everywhere. They know what's going on the ground, and they'll know from Leeds and they'll know from Tanaka's agent as well. Because Tanaka's agent will probably look at this and go, oh, another one coming in, eh? Another one coming in terms of like a creation perspective, which Tanaka will put himself into that mold, presumably, anyway. I don't think we would anyway as fans. I don't think we classify him as a 6. I don't think we classify him as a box-to-box. I think we see him as a sort of deep-line playmaker or just a creator in general. So it's interesting, this, but the PSR limit will have to move around. They will have to move around, and Leeds are going to have to sell at some stage. They are. And will you facilitate enough money selling Gruev? No. Are you going to facilitate enough money selling Joel Peru when it comes to... Obviously, you've got to balance the books, and there's book value. But you've got to look at Peru, and the noises that are coming out are still that he's... I don't know, he's not going. he's not going, but things can change. We all know things can change very, very quickly. I mean, who'd have said 5 days ago that Leeds are on the verge of, I mean, with Buonanotte and this guy bringing in 2 like 10s, who'd have said that like 5 days ago? None of us. So, yeah. What's special about this guy, Connor? If you saw him before? No, Rowie, I've not seen him before. I've heard the name, but it's just only been on social media when it's been other clubs linked with him. All I can say about him is he's the second biggest chance creator in the Bundesliga this season, and he's flying at the minute. So Jay's in the building. Hey, Jay, where are you, mate? I had you then, and the chat's gone. Sorry, Jay. The chat's flying. Gabe's here says, I think it's more likely Nonto goes than Tanaka. I think Farke likes to stockpile midfielders and seems like we'd rather redundancy and attacker positional flexibility. Gabe swallowed a thesaurus this morning than potentially being thin at central midfield. Yeah, potentially, mate, but I think there's a level of which Farke can control here, and then there's a level of which Tanaka will be looking at this and he'll be thinking about his future. He's 27, so I can't imagine if Tanaka wants to leave Leeds. And we're not, by the way, this isn't, I guess we are hypothesizing a little bit here because there's no foundational truth in any of this. However, what I will say is that you've got to think of the profit that Leeds are going to make on certain players with what they brought them in for. I would look at Tanaka and probably say the fact that we brought him in for £5 million or whatever it was, maybe even less. What's the gap going to be to the value that you're actually going to get for someone like Tanaka? I think it's going to be greater for Tanaka. And you got to think with Nonto still. I know a lot of you don't like him. When he was given 90 minutes against Derby the other day, he got man of the match. We know he's got a very, very high ceiling. He's like one of the youngest players in the squad, guys. He's just turned 22, Willie Nonto, which is crazy to think about. So Leeds might be thinking we can keep hold of him a little bit, develop him and sell him for a greater value because he's only 22. Tanaka is what, 27, 28? If Leeds need to get that PSR headroom, the most they're going to get for Tanaka is probably in this window or the next window. So, yeah. Sam John says, where's Brownie? This isn't white noise. So Brownie will be on white noise. Pirot out, Nonto out, Gruev out, Strauch out, would lose depth. Tanaka out, loss of depth. If we have more injuries, it would put us in a bit of a tricky position. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good addition. Like someone like him coming in. I think, as I've said, we all whinge about needing a creator. Some people asking how tall he is. Let's have a look. So he is, I don't work in centimeters. I know you Americans work in centimeters. So let's see. He's very small, if that is correct. So he's 167 centimeters, which is 5'5". So I think Daniel Pedence, if that is true, some of you guys might be able to confirm that, but we are turning into a diminutive bunch all of a sudden. We've got Facundo Buonanotte is about 5 foot. And then Schmidt. That actually might have to be a conversation as well, you know. If we're going for like long balls in from a throw-in, and let's say, you know, certain personnel are coming out. Let's say if Metch is out for the foreseeable, like of our formation, if we do turn to a 4-2-3-1, it's actually quite interesting to think about that. If you get like Buonanotte in there and you get Schmidt in there, Leeds' height drastically reduces. Let's say if like Okafor was taken out or, you know, or the Metcher to fill a formation, you know, a void. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Would we be annoyed if Farke goes to a high possession, dominant style of play again? When the 3-5-2 have worked so well? I think it's got to be long-term, mate. I think long-term thinking, you get someone like Schmidt in now with who he is and what we're reading about him. I think that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It makes more sense. You get someone like him in, and it's a long-term projection. It's your long-term thought. It's thinking ahead of the curve, which Leeds United don't do. So Facundo Buonanotte's loan is going to come to an end in the summer. And what Leeds United would normally do is go, oh, what do we do now? Like, it's not to say we've been poorly, you know, we're poorly running of the 49ers, but let's be brutally honest. It does seem to get to that point is sometimes when players go, you are a little bit like, well, what's the plan here? A la Ben White. What's the plan now? I think the beautiful thing about someone like Romano Schmidt coming in is he's doing exceptionally well in the Bundesliga, created a lot of chances. And when Facundo Buonanotte does go back to Brighton, we at least have that long-term plan. I guess the conversation would just be, A, who's going out for that PSR conversation, which Gabe was just speaking about. It's probably going to be Nonto, Tanaka or Strauch. Who's going to make the most money from that as well, and who's going to put us in a green sort of area when it comes to PSR, of course, and with the most that we'd make back. We might even sell both of them or 3 of them. I doubt it, but 2 out of the 3 might be forced to do that. So a lot of conversations here, but, you know, my conversation then would be like, you know, who's going to get the most minutes? if Facundo Buonanotte is within this side now, I've said to you guys before that just because Buonanotte has been signed on loan, it doesn't mean that he's going to be playing minutes a la Connor Roberts. But if Facundo Buonanotte is within this Leeds remit now, and Romano Schmidt comes in and we go to a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, is Facundo Buonanotte going to be starting games for Leeds United? You know, is that what's going to happen? Or maybe if we do go to a 4-2-3-1, you've got Buonanotte on one side, you've got Schmidt in the middle, and then you've got Okafor and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. But that does change a little bit, you know, your output, I guess. Tanaka will be looking at the World Cup. Don't blame him. All agree, completely agree. Nathan says, unsure why Dan James has not been mentioned as a sale. He's going to be redundant. Need to maximise that sale. It will be Tanaka in the summer. Can't see any club with 20 million headroom. Completely agree. Mr. Fairbanks says, has anybody mentioned how much safer at the back will look with Darlow? Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit, mate. Tanaka out, I reckon, massive PSR profit, and he is not smiling as he did. In fact, at times he looks irritated. I mean, what I will say, 78 RPM, what has irritated me slightly is this kind of rhetoric all of a sudden that Tanaka, we need to let Tanaka go. It just makes me laugh. How flippant and we all can be like this, but how fickle it can get sometimes. This guy was the best player at our club 6 months ago by a country mile. Now there's a conversation now 100%, but technically he's still a very good player. And I keep saying this, like with Gnonto, this is why I'm always of the defense of Willie Gnonto. It's difficult when you don't get the minutes that you want for the last 2 years. I still see the same thing as well with someone like, you know, Tanaka. Tanaka's shown how brilliant he is, how superb he is. It's not Tanaka's fault that he's not getting enough minutes. You know, that's not Tanaka's fault when he comes on for 5 minutes. People then judge him. It's like Jorgen Strand Larsen today. Watch him against Wolves. Some fans, which is fair enough, but make a massive judgment on him and turn around and go, well, he's crap. Jorgen Strand Larsen, seen him for 25 minutes, coming on as a sub, he's crap. That's it. And that's the judgment. And that, unfortunately, that's how quickly it can change. Jorgen Strand Larsen's an excellent striker and would be a brilliant addition for Leeds United in this window. And once again, it would be that European mindset of, who know if we European mindset. Yes, I know I'm being slightly ambitious, but top 10 mindset. Who knows in the future? Like Sunderland are looking at. If Leeds is bringing Jorgen Strand Larsen, maybe Romano Schmidt, Buonanotte on a pair, things like this. Leeds are building for the future. It's not just going to be about battling up against relegation, but as well because the Premier League is so good right now. You need these players in your squad to be able to have that technical level to keep you up as well. The Premier League might get tougher next season. Might get even tougher. It might get a little bit more expansive. So you might need top players to keep you up. Might not even be building, but you do have that ceiling of being able to build with these sorts of players.
次は解説です。今回はこれまで解説したことがない新しいボキャブラリーもいくつかありましたので、イギリスでよく使われる表現なども含めて、本日の解説をチェックしてみましょ
We mentioned this morning about amortization.
アモルティゼーションは日本語で償却といい、大きな費用を一気に払ったことにせず、期間に分けて計上する考え方です。サッカーの移籍では、移籍金を契約年分数で割って、毎年のコストとして扱うときによく出ます。例えば4000万ポンドで5年契約なら、会計上は年800万ポンドずつ費用になります。ため、今年すぐに4000万ポンド分の負担が乗るという見方にはなりません。PSR の話題で、エモロタイゼーションが出るのは、この年ごとの負担を平準化する仕組みが関係するからです。ただし魔法の抜け道ではなく、契約が残るほど未償却分が残り、売却時の帳簿価格にも影響します。つまり、短期の補強だけでなく、中長期の資金計画にもつながる重要ワードです。試合の話だけでなく、移籍の裏側を理解するのに役立つ表現です。
We mentioned this morning about amortization. Which is being possession-laden, dominant at home.
レーデンは何かをたくさん乗せている、何かでいっぱいになっているという意味の形容詞です。荷物を積んだ車のような物理的な意味でも、感情や情報が詰まった文章のような抽象的な意味でも使えます。この動画のポセッションレーデンという形では、ポセッションが多い、保持中心のという意味になります。つまりボールを長く持って試合を支配するスタイルを表すときに出てきます。レイデンは少し固めの型なので、解説や分析の文章でよく合います。フルと近い言葉ですが、レイデンの方がどっさり濃い感じが出ます。覚えると、評論や実況の表現が一段豊かになります。
Which is being possession-laden, dominant at home. Which is being possession-laden, dominant at home. Surely when you're looking at PSR headroom and wriggle room.
ヘドルームはもともと頭の上の空間、天井までの高さという意味です。そこから比喩で上限までの余裕、まだ使える枠という意味でもよく使われます。例えば、予算や賃金とルールの制限などで、あとどれくらい余裕があるかを表すときに便利です。サッカーでは、PSR ヘドルームのように、財務規制の中で使える余裕枠を指します。つまり、まだ補強できる余裕があるのかを説明するときに出てきます。物理的な高さの意味と、財務や制度の余裕の意味をセットで覚えると理解が早いです。ログルは、体をくねくねさせて動くという意味の動詞です。子供が椅子の上でもぞもぞしたり、魚や虫がうねって動く場面で使われます。この単語は動きが小刻みで、じっとしていない感じを表します。比喩として、ログルアウトフになると、責任や質問からうまく逃れるという意味になります。つまり正面から答えずに、言い逃れするニュアンスが出ます。さらに動画でも使われている、ログルロームという表現は、体をくねくねできるスペースというイメージから、調整できる余地や融通の利く幅を表します。予算やルールの話で、まだ何とかできる余地があるという時に便利です。サッカーの PSR 文脈でも、やりくりの余地という意味でよく合います。
Surely when you're looking at PSR headroom and wriggle room. Surely when you're looking at PSR headroom and wriggle room. Surely when you're looking at PSR headroom and wriggle room. And I think, as I've said, we all whinge about needing a creator.
ウィンジは、ぐちぐち文句を言うという意味のイギリス英語の口語です。コンプレインよりも、しつこく不満を言っている感じが出ます。サッカーの配信や SNS では、ファンが不満をこぼす場面でよく見かけます。例えば移籍が遅い、戦術が気に入らない、審判がひどいなどの話題で使われます。丁寧に訳すなら、文句を言う、不満を言うと訳すと自然です。ニュアンスを少ししたいときは、愚痴る、ぐだぐだ言うも近いです。
I think, as I've said, we all whinge about needing a creator. And I think, as I've said, we all whinge about needing a creator. But it's thinking ahead of the curve, which Leeds United don't do.
Think ahead of the curve は、周りより先を読んで考えるという意味の言い方です。ahead of the curve は、時代の流れや周囲より先を行くという比喩表現で、先回りしている状態を表します。そこに think がつくことで、先回りして判断する、先手を打って考えるという意味になります。サッカーでは補強やチーム作りで将来を見越して動くときに使われます。例えばレンタルが終わる前に後継候補を確保するといった話で出やすいです。少しビジネスっぽい響きですが、解説や分析では自然に使えます。日本語では先を見越す、先回りすると訳すとわかりやすいです。
It's thinking ahead of the curve, which Leeds United don't do. How flippant and we all can be like this.
フリッパントは、軽率な不真面目なという意味の形容詞です。深刻な話題に対して、冗談っぽく流したり、適当に扱う態度を批判するときに使います。例えば、怪我や解任、差別などの重いテーマで、軽いコメントをするとフリッパントと言われます。単に面白い冗談というより、空気を読まずに軽く言い過ぎというニュアンスが強いです。日本語では軽く言い過ぎだよ、茶化している、不謹慎と訳すと近いです。サッカーの議論でも、選手の放出を簡単に言う人に対して使われることがあります。つまり、そんな簡単な話じゃないのにという気持ちが含まれます。覚えると、議論のトーンを正しく読み取れるようになります。
How flippant and we all can be like this. How flippant and we all can be like this, but how fickle it can get sometimes.
フィクルは、気まぐれですぐ変わるという意味の形容詞です。人の気持ちや意見がコロコロ変わるときに使います。サッカーでは、ファンの評価が一気に変わる状況でよく使われます。昨日まで褒めていたのに、少し悪いプレーがあると急に批判するような場面です。日本語では移り気、手のひら返し一貫性がないなどが近いです。天気や世論など変わりやすいものにも使えます。予測できないという意味の unpredictable と似ていますが、フィックルは軽い気持ちで変わる感じが強いです。覚えると、評論や解説のニュアンスがわかりやすくなります。
But how fickle it can get sometimes.
いかがでしたか？田中碧の移籍の話は、今のところ噂も上がってきていませんが、リーズファンの間では、田中碧が売却される可能性は高まっていると感じているようです。必ずしもそれは田中碧が必要ではないということでもなく、 決して悪いことではないと思いますが、全体の状況を鑑みて、同じポジションや似たタイプの選手が補強されていること、それにより序列が下がる可能性があること。PSR の観点では、獲得した金額が安く、売却する際の移籍金が高くなる可能性が高いこと。年齢を考えても、高値で売却できるベストなタイミングの可能性もあること。田中碧自身に明らかに不満が伺え、来ること。そもそも素晴らしい選手であるため、現状が彼にとってふさわしい待遇でないことなど、あらゆる点から移籍の可能性が最も高そうに感じるのでしょう。一番の問題は、おそらく1500万ポンドでは少し安いくらいで、2000万ポンドやそれ以上を期待すると、実際に獲得しに来るクラブがあるかということで、あり、実際に、具体的な話も出ていないことから、なかなか難しそうですが、ブライトンレベルのクラブが2000万ポンドでも出せるのなら、迷うことなく移籍してほしいと思います。まだ移籍市場も時間があるので、今後の動向を期待したいと思います。本日もご視聴いただきありがとうございました。またすぐにお会いしましょう。